morning. I'm Jack Wheeler.
And I'm Cage Purtle.
We're members of the Choo Choo Forge at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Cage and I have developed a tong blank. It's laser cut, made out of 1/4 inch thick mild steel. The reins are 14 inches long from the boss to the tip. The boss is 7/8 inch by 7/8 inch with a 1/4 inch hole in the center of it. And the jaws are 1/4 inch thick by 3 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. These same tong blanks can be used to make a variety of different tongs. And some of those we haven't even thought about. We've thought about up to about 10 different tongs and made those so far. The only prep work you need to use these blanks is to grind down the corners. These are laser cut, so the corners are fairly sharp when they're cut, to relieve the edges of the corners. And depending on the type of tongs you're making, you may want to shorten the jaw to make different styles of tongs. The great thing about making a pair of tongs from a blank is 80% of the work done to make a pair of tongs is from the tip of the boss down to the tip of the reins. Making them from blanks eliminates that 80% of the work of making a pair of tongs. Now all you have to do is forge the jaw to the shape you want it to make the jaws of the type of tongs you are making. These tongs are made by an internet company called Send Cut Send. We send them a copy of what we want, they make them and they send to us. We've gotten several quotes of laser cut blanks to make these. Send Cut Send had by far the best price, and the delivery has been very great. The dimensions are exactly what we ordered, and we're very happy with the process. Today we're going to make gripping tongs for flat bar or knives. These gripping tongs are made from the same blanks that we've been used previously, and these tongs will grip anywhere from about 2.5 inches flat bar, depending on how wide you make them, down to about 1 inch gripping. These tongs the smaller ones will make slightly less than 1 inch. The limit here is when the jaws touch each other as they go together. That's the limit of your gripping, the small limit of your gripping. You can grind off some from either side of these jaws once you've completed the tongs to make them grip a little bit smaller, but going down below 1/8 of an inch off each side is probably going to be too much. Will weaken the tongs and make them not as useful. To make these tongs, I've already cut 1 inch off each end of the tong blanks, and I've ground down the edges to prepare them for use. The first step in making tongs using these blanks is to put a slight bend in the reins right up next to the boss to make them easier to tweak once they're in the assembly process. Another option on doing this bend at the base of the boss is to hold both of them around next to the rounded edge of the anvil, about 1/4 inch from the edge of the anvil, and bend both at one time. That does probably a better job because it gets them bent to the same radius. And that bend makes them easier to assemble when they're ready to assemble. It also leaves a space between the reins so that doesn't interfere when you hang them on a tong rack, and it doesn't splay the tongs out so they get in the way. So you can see what they will look like assembled from the boss down with that. Tweaking the tongs after they're forged is a long process. If you've been in the blacksmith community very long, you've probably heard the saying, forging is quick, tweaking is forever. Well, that's the same case with tongs. You can spend a lot of time getting the tongs tweaked to the point where you really want to use them after you've forged and assembled the tongs. I've heated both these blanks to a high yellow heat, and I'm going to do the bends just at the back of the boss to start with. That makes them even with each other. They're bent to the same radius. I've got enough heat left now so I can go out to the sharp corner of the anvil, and you'll need the sharpest corner of the anvil just about that you have, and I'm going to let them hang over the anvil about 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to bend them both down at a 90-degree angle together. We'll have to hit both out here and up here to get them bent. So I've got my bend mostly made. I'm going to take another heat to complete that bend to a full 90 degrees. I've heated these back up to a high yellow heat, and I'm going to complete that bend at the tips, the gripping tips of these tongs. That completes the gripping tip. The next thing I'm going to do is draw out each end of these gripping tips a small amount, not a lot. Bend them down somewhat. Keep them about 1/2 inch in width. Now I'm going to draw down the second tip of the gripping jaws, keeping it the same 1/2 inch width, down to slightly more than half the thickness that it was originally, which would be a little bit more than 1/8 inch thick, leaving it about a 1/2 inch wide. Flat bar or knife gripping tongs are one pair of tongs that the jaws, the gripping jaws, are not bent in the same direction as each other. In this case, the right hand jaw will have to be bent up and around this way. The left hand jaw will have to be bent up and around that way. And I'll do this in the step of the anvil, but you got to be careful to bend them the correct way, or you'll have to straighten them out again and rebend them, because it's a little tricky getting them bent in the right direction. My bend is going to be very close to the junction of the gripping jaw and the long jaw, and I'll make that bend just above this 90-degree, that bend of the gripping jaw just above this 90-degree bend here. And I'll do it all in the step of the anvil. This one I'll do it in that way in the step of the anvil. This one I'll do it this way in the step of the anvil. So as you can see, they're both bent differently. So I've heated the first jaw to a medium yellow heat, and I'm going to put it on the step of the anvil and bend it with the peen of my hammer not all the way around, part of the way around, because I'm going to use whatever size stock I'm going to be making this for to make the finished bend so that it will hold the stock firmly. I've heated the second jaw to a high yellow, and I'm going to compare it to the first jaw to make sure I make the bend in the correct direction. So the direction will be up and away toward me for that bend. Bend also in the step about the same place as the other one. Not making the full bend yet, just 2/3 of the bend. That way they fit together. Both bends go in the same direction, and they're at the same place because we bent them 90 degrees together, which leaves the long part of the jaw the same length as on both sides. Next, we're going to assemble the pair of tongs using a 1/4 inch rivet by 3/4 inches long. I did run a drill bit through these holes before we do this, just to make sure the rivet fits and they haven't been disfigured during the forging process. So I'll put the rivet in the bottom half, put it through the top half, and it sticks out. I'm going to use a very firm part of the anvil to do the riveting. The rivet's going to be straight up and down, at least for the first few hits, and I'm going to hit with a flat hammer. Notice that I didn't finish the bend on the jaws, on the gripping jaws, prior to assembling these. I'm going to finish the gripping jaw bends using a mandrel that I've got that fits the size material I want to be able to hold with these tongs. The riveting process tightened up the jaws so they wouldn't move, but a little heat takes care of that. I'll exercise them a little bit to get to where they move correctly. Next, I'm going to put in a piece of material that I'm going to be holding with this, and I'm going to bend around that piece of material to make sure it fits what I'm trying to hold. Need to bend this jaw down a little bit further so it grips that better. This is a piece of 1.5 by 1/4. So I've got it in the jaws. I'm going to bend it around the mandrel or the piece that I'm going to be holding so that it holds it properly. And you can see that that will hold this piece of 1.5 by 1/4 properly. I still have to adjust the reins. One of them is a lot higher than the other. I'm going to have to adjust them down to where they're one on top of the other. I'll do that in the next heat. The next heat will be at a low red. I'm going to bend these reins down so that one will be directly on top of the other. One hammer blow there, one hammer blow there. Gets that where it needs to be. But that made the jaw part move. So now I'm going to adjust the jaw part so one is directly above the other. Now I'm going to have to do that again. Now I've got the two reins directly above each other. The rivets loosened up a little bit, so I'm going to tighten that rivet just a little, not so tight that it won't move, but just a little. So now I've got the jaws in the position they need to be in. They will grip the piece of material that I'm gripping with it. And I'm going to make a little bit of adjustment there to make sure the grip is exactly what I need, and I'll do it at this heat. That'll be pretty tight, but they'll loosen up as time goes on. So they will grip this 1.5 by 1/4 very firmly right now. So I've got the gripping jaws adjusted so they grip the size material that I want to grip. However, when I look at the ends of the reins, when I grip that size, the ends of the reins are close together. I want to put a little distance between the reins so that when I grip that material, I have some spring left in it so it'll hold them tightly. To do that, I'm going to bend each of the jaws down, maybe a half inch, 3/16, maybe 1/8 of an inch, so they will grip that piece of material tighter. And I've got spring in the reins so I can hold it tighter. I also going to make sure they hold straight out, both directions, both planes. As you can see, the gripping jaws do hold the piece that I intended for it to hold very firmly. However, it's at an angle and the back side of that touches the rivet. So to correct that, I'm going to turn this to this side, put a mandrel under here, and bend those jaws down slightly so it will offset them to one side of the tongs so that they will hold a little straighter without impacting the rivet that's in the hinge joint. To offset these jaws so it will hold the piece that I want to grip a little bit straighter, I'm going to put a mandrel on the top of the anvil, hang the gripping jaws off the edge of the anvil so that they don't get bent in the process, and I'm going to hit with the back edge of my hammer right here to bend those down so that they will be slightly offset from the line of the reins of the tongs. You can see that offset here. So after I've done my offset by hammering those jaws down against the anvil, I'll check my grip again. I'll open them up, put in the piece that I want to grip, tighten them back down on that piece, and you can see that the grip is straighter and pretty much parallel to the reins. And the final step in the process is to clean it up a little bit, getting the scale off with a wire brush, and put on a touch mark. I'll call my power hammer to come over, and we'll put the touch mark on here. Touch mark is on, ready to use. If you're going to use these for a knife blade, you'll probably want to get a little thinner piece to put in there, maybe 3/16, maybe even a little thinner than that. Adjust your gripping jaws down to that, hold that thickness of material, and you can adjust these. That's, tongs are made to be adjusted, so as you need to increase or decrease the gripping jaws, do that as needed.